Okay, for this video we're just going to do a real quick example of how to simplify square roots. And so we're going to start with this example here, the square root of 80. And so we're going to try and simplify that. And the key thing to simplifying square roots is you need to be very familiar with the list called the perfect squares. And so if we take a look at the perfect squares, they are 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. This is not a complete list. It continues on from here. However, this is the list of ones that you'll use most of the time when you're trying to simplify a square root, especially the lower ones. So if you're very familiar with 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, you're probably doing pretty good. So what we want to consider is, how can we break down 80? What are factors of 80 in which one of the factors is one of these numbers from the list? So we're not interested in breaking down 80 by just anything, because there's lots of things that make 80. 2 and 40 make 80, but since 2 and 40 do not appear in this list, we aren't interested in using those. So we want to try and find numbers that are in the list that divide into 80. Preferably the largest number in the list that divides into 80. So if we start considering some of these numbers, and all we have to do is just try and divide them into the number and see if it works. So to try and divide 4 into 80, and if we divide 4 into 80, that does divide evenly. So we'll keep that in our mind, and we'll come back and see if anything else divides evenly. 9 into 80 does not divide evenly. 16 into 80 does divide evenly. It divides in there 5 times. Okay, so we're just trying these. You can use your calculator to try them out. So once we find out that 16 divides evenly, you can try some of the other ones. None of them are going to work. But we're going to say, okay, well, 16 divides into 80 5 times. So we're going to break this down, and you can think, I'd like to break it down like a factor tree. So 80 is divisible by 16 and 5, so we're going to rewrite this as the square root of 16 and the square root of 5. And the whole reason for doing this is because the square root of 16, the reason we wanted one of these numbers to divide into 80 is because the square root of 16 makes a nice whole number. The square root of 16 is 4. And so that becomes just 4. The square root of 5 is not a whole number. It's a decimal. It's irrational. So we'll just leave it just like it is. So this just becomes 4 times the square root of 5. And if you try this in your calculator, square root of 80, decimal approximation, and then if you try 4 square root of 5, decimal approximation, you're going to see that they're the exact same value. Because 4 times the square root of 5 when you reduce it, or I'm sorry, the square root of 80 when you reduce it is 4 times the square root of 5. So that's it. That's all there is to your answer. Now, I'm going to show you real quickly what would happen if you didn't get to 16, if you tried 4 first, because we do know that 4 divides into 80 evenly. So let's try this again using 4. So this time we break it down. We say, okay, this is divisible by 4, and 4 goes into 80 20 times. Okay, so that works great. So the square root of 4 is 2. The only problem is that the square root of 20, if I consider the numbers over here, you can see that, hey, hang on a second, 4 divides into 20. So what it means is we just didn't simplify far enough. It's like when you take a fraction and you try and reduce it. If you don't reduce by the greatest common number, then you're going to have to do it more than one step. And so that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to divide now. 20 is the square root of 4 and the square root of 5. And so this square root of 4 also makes a 2. And so when I bring down this 2, we've got 2 times the square root of 5, and 2 times 2 is 4, square root 5, and that's how you also can get the exact same answer, just in a matter of a couple steps. So there's nothing wrong with doing this method. As a matter of fact, if you're doing very large numbers, you're practically speaking, you're probably going to have to do it in several steps. But either way, you end up with 4 times the square root of 5. Nice thing about this is when you're done, you can always check your answer. If you get a different answer, you check the decimal approximation, check it back with the original. If they don't line up, something went wrong, you can start back over. So, I hope it helps.